So in the realm of Marvel Comics, we have Eternity, the embodiment of the entire Earth 616 continuity. We have Galactus, who goes around and consumes planets, who has powers so incredible that he's been a fan favorite since his initial inception in the Fantastic Four trilogy. But there's one man, one earthbound character who stands alone, and we're going to talk about him. My peeps, my comic and comicettes. Today, we're going to be doing a video about the one and only Owen Reece. Today, we're going to be talking about Molecule Man. So given everything that's going on in the Marvel Universe right now, the impending end of all the realities and Doctor Doom being revealed to be a Rabu Malal. Oh my god, I ruined it. Molecule Man is more important now than he's ever been before. Now, we don't exactly know why. We just know that he is. And so I figured right now would be the best time to do a video about the Molecule Man, because what we can do going forward is we can look at his character, knowing his past, and we can really understand the role that he's going to be playing within the Secret Wars event, within the lead up to the end of all these alternate realities in the Marvel continuity. So Molecule Man first appeared in Fantastic Four Volume 1, issue number 20, and he was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Now, I've not been able to find why it was they had created him, but I would go as far as to say because he was made during the early days of the Silver Age in Marvel Comics, he was most likely simply just made as part of this mad dash to create as many supervillains and superheroes as possible, and then just kind of throw them at the wall to see which ones stick. And so what happens in Fantastic Four issue number 20 is that Owen Reece is revealed to us to be a man who basically has a very low image of himself. He had been raised in such a way where he was really more of a mama's boy than anything else. And so as a result, when his mother had passed away, he had really began to garner this sort of negative self-image about himself. Now, this was compounded by the fact that he worked as a lowly lab technician within the company of Acme Atomics Corporation. And so as a result, he's basically working long hours, he has very little pay, and he's really kind of your archetypical person who feels like they're working a thankless job. And so what happens is that while he's working on a particle accelerator, or I guess he accidentally activates a particle accelerator, and the result is that he ends up developing his abilities. Now, the way in which he develops his abilities was something that we had covered during our discussion about the Beyonder, but for those of you guys who didn't get a chance to see it, of course, I'll have a link in the description, but the way that this happens is that there were pockets of energy that were placed around the negative zone, and whenever a portal is open to one of these pockets of energy, the energy comes out, and then a containment unit is supposed to be, I guess, created for the purpose of housing this energy, and this containment unit would go on to be referred to as a cosmic cube. But the problem was that when Owen Reece had activated this particle generator, that there was no containment unit. There was nowhere for this power to go. And so as a result, half of the power went into Owen Reece, giving him his abilities, and the other half of the power kind of festered and then manifested into the Beyonder later on. And so what we found over the course of this issue of the Fantastic Four is that once Owen Reece develops his powers, this sort of self-doubt that he has begins to really become more of a mental block. At the same time, he also develops this wand of sorts. And as far as he's concerned, the power that he possesses is within the wand itself. And the reason why is because he cannot fathom that he would have that kind of power, that he would have the ability to manipulate molecules. Now, the way that his power is initially presented to us is actually revealed when Reed Richards begins to analyze Molecule Man. And the reason why this happens is because Uatu the Watcher, who had seen Molecule Man developing his powers, had informed Reed Richards of what had gone on and the fact that Molecule Man could basically live to become an extremely dangerous person who would not only go on to possibly destroy the planet Earth, but could also lay ruin to the universe as a whole. And so when Reed Richards analyzes the powers of the Molecule Man, what he realizes is that Owen Reece is only capable of manipulating inorganic particles, meaning that he's only able to manipulate the particles of things that cannot become life. That is to say, he cannot manipulate the particles of grass or trees or the dirt or space itself. He can only manipulate the particles of inanimate objects, of desks and of desks and I guess maybe cups and different things like that. Nothing that has any real kind of life to it. And so as a result, what happens here is a Fantastic Four developed this plan to basically send Molecule Man away. What happens here is Alicia Masters, who is the girlfriend of Ben Grimm, the Thing, lures Owen Reece to her apartment under the guise that she will be able to, or I guess he'll be able to meet with the Fantastic Four, whom he's basically made a kind of challenge to, in the sense that he's basically basically isolated the city of New York and stated that unless they bring themselves out, the city's going to stay the way it is forever. And so when the Fantastic Four arrive to meet with Owen and Reece, what happens here is that they basically make themselves out to be statues. And so when Owen Reece tries to manipulate these statues, he finds that he can't do it, again tapping into his inability to manipulate organic particles. And so what Reed Richards does is he takes this opportunity to send Molecule Man to a different dimension. Now, this other dimension that Molecule Man gets sent to is actually covered to us later on in Marvel Comics. Again, we really wouldn't see Molecule Man for quite some time, but what Marvel does here is they tell us that while Owen Reece is confined to this dimension, he effectively creates this sort of offspring of sorts. He creates this kind of humanoid being. And so what he does is he basically sort of throws his consciousness into this kind of, into this wand that he possesses, and as a result, this humanoid being is able to transition this dimensional barrier and travel back to the Earth 616 continuity. And this is how how Molecule Man will exist for quite some time. Molecule Man will exist within the confines of this wand. Think of it very similar to the Lord of the Rings and Sauron, that if a person takes possession of this wand, they'll effectively be controlled, or I guess they'll be able to, they'll be subdued and subjected by Molecule Man, and Molecule Man will be able to exist through them. Now, what Marvel was basically doing here was trying to find a way to keep Molecule Man relevant, but remove his ability to manipulate molecular matter. The reason being because the question became, how many stories could you really have with a man who could manipulate molecules before you got to the point whereby you had to say his power has to go somewhere? And so DC eventually hit this roadblock, Marvel eventually hit this roadblock in the 1980s. And when they ran into the 1980s, we saw that Jim Shooter had written the Secret Wars. Now, with the Secret War event, of course, as we know, this was the Beyonder gaining sentience. This was the Beyonder taking all these superheroes and supervillains, confining them to Battleworld and so on. But as the entire Secret Wars event began to come to a close, what we found was that when Dr. Doom had taken possession of the powers of the Beyonder, he had realized what it was that Owen Reece was capable of. And so what happens here is he basically takes Owen Reece aside, and he says that these powers that Owen Reece has transition virtually anything and anyone that is currently on Battleworld, with the exception of Dr. Doom himself. And so what he tells Owen Reece is that he can basically manipulate the entire fabric of reality if he wanted to. There's nothing that he can't do. And so this is basically Owen Reece moving away from this negative aspect, moving away from this self-doubt that he has about himself, and stepping into the role of becoming a superhero. And so this would continue on into the Secret Wars Part 2, when the Beyonder travels to the planet Earth, when he begins to undertake this role of trying to learn about humanity. And this is really when a lot of people look at Molecule Man and say this is when he stepped away from the realm of being your run-of-the-mill supervillain who had powers to actually becoming a more defined character. But what happens here initially is that the Beyonder arrives to meet with Molecule Man, realizing that Molecule Man is really the only other person that has the same kind of power he does. And so what happens is Molecule Man basically tells him if he wants to learn about humanity, he should spend time among humanity. And so again, while things continue with the Beyonder, and the Beyonder continues to get progressively more dangerous, which again was something we had covered during our Beyonder video, the attempt is made on behalf of several superheroes for Molecule Man to speak with the Beyonder, to at the very least try to intervene on the Beyonder, or I guess on the superhero's half, against the Beyonder. But Owen Reece, who has basically isolated himself to a life of peace, doesn't want to have anything to do with this. He doesn't want to manipulate his powers or use his powers in any way that could really draw a whole lot of attention to him. But all this really comes to a head when eventually the Beyonder reaches such a scale of power and begins to implement his power in such a way to where an ultimate conflict forms between Molecule Man and the Beyonder, whereby they fight over the course of several dimensions. They actually have this big multi-dimensional fight. And this was Marvel basically giving us the in-depth nature of how far Molecule Man's powers go. If Molecule Man is able to manipulate organic matter, then he can manipulate organic matter regardless of where that matter's at, meaning that he can basically transition dimensions. He has power that is, for as far as we can tell, on par with the power of the Living Tribunal. And so this is what people are referring to whenever you hear a discussion about Molecule Man, and they refer to him as pre-retcon Molecule Man. This is the height of his abilities. Now, we would find that Molecule Man would actually be retconned by Marvel when we got into the 1990s, when we got into the follow-up with the Beyonder and the events after Secret Wars Part 2. And what we found here was that Molecule Man and the Beyonder had basically converged into a single being. It was more of the powers that had initially formed both of them coming together to form a more cohesive unit. And so as a result, what we found was that the Beyonder and and Molecule Man had basically formed their own kind of cosmic cube and then gone on to form their own reality. Now, Molecule Man would eventually strip his consciousness away from this reality per se, from its own universe, and eventually return himself to the Marvel landscape. But from this point going forward, Molecule Man really doesn't play any prominent roles in Marvel Comics. He actually becomes sort of this background character for quite some time. It's actually not until the current events of Marvel Comics, that is to say what's going on right now, that Molecule Man has become significant. Now, with the current events and what's taking place with Time Runs Out, the lead up to Secret Wars, what we know is that Doctor Doom has been revealed to us to have been Rabu Malal, but that he's basically attempting to save the universe. And what he's done is he's enlisted Molecule Man to help him do this. Now, we don't know exactly how it is that they're going to try to save the universe. We don't know how it is that they're going to even try to save the multiverse as a whole. All we know is that at this moment right now, Molecule Man is somehow working in conjunction with Doctor Doom to find some way to preserve the multiverse as it exists in the Marvel continuity. With that being said, my peeps, my Marvel and Marvelettes, we're going to bring this video to an end. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, let me know, and I will catch you guys later. Peace. Be sure to follow me on Twitter. There you can keep up with all the updates from Comics Explained and talk to me directly.